You think they don't love you. But what if they do, and they just can't say it? What if the person pulling away from you right now is actually terrified of how much they feel? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share is going to completely change how you see that person in your life, and more importantly, how you see yourself in this situation. Here is what nobody tells you about avoidance. The very moment they feel closest to you is the exact moment they start to disappear. And if you have ever experienced that, if you have ever felt someone get warm and then suddenly cold, pull you in and then push you away, feel like home one day and like a stranger the next, then this is the conversation you have been waiting for without even knowing it. Because I am not just going to explain avoidant behavior to you today. I am going to pull back the curtain on 4 specific things an avoidant will never tell you out loud. Things that live deep inside them. Things even they might not fully understand about themselves. And I am going to show you exactly what to do with that information so that you stop suffering and start making real, clear decisions about your love life. So if that sounds like something you need right now, drop the word clarity in the comments below. Just that one word. And make sure you are subscribed, because what we talk about here is the kind of honest, no fluff conversation about love and relationships that most people are too afraid to have. Now let's get into it. The first thing an avoidant will never tell you is this: they are not pulling away from you. They are pulling away from themselves. I want you to really sit with that for a second, because I know how personal it feels when someone withdraws. I know how easy it is to immediately go to that place of, what did I do wrong? What is wrong with me? Am I too much? Am I not enough? Did I say something? Did I come on too strong? Your brain goes into this frantic problem-solving mode, because if you can just figure out what you did, then you can fix it. You can bring them back. You can feel safe again. But here is the hard truth that sets you free. Their withdrawal is not a verdict on you. It is a survival response that has been wired into them long before you ever came into their life. Avoidant people, and I mean those who genuinely have an avoidant attachment style, not just someone who is not that into you, which is a different conversation entirely, but true avoidance. They have a deeply ingrained belief system that says connection is dangerous, not just uncomfortable, dangerous. At a subconscious level, closeness feels like a threat. And the closer they get to someone, the more that internal alarm system starts going off. Now think about that from their perspective for a moment. Imagine waking up every day and your nervous system being wired to interpret love as something to be afraid of. Not because you want to be afraid of it, not because you are choosing to sabotage things, but because somewhere in your early life, the people who were supposed to love you also hurt you, confused you, left you, smothered you, or made love feel conditional and unpredictable. So your nervous system did what nervous systems do. It adapted. It built walls. It learned to associate getting close with eventually getting hurt. And those walls became so automatic, so deeply embedded, that now as an adult, every time you start to feel real love, real connection, real intimacy, the walls go up before you even realize it is happening. That is what is going on with the avoidant in your life. When they go cold, when they pull back, when they suddenly become distant, they are not thinking, how can I hurt this person? They are not thinking, I do not want this relationship anymore. What is actually happening is that something about the growing closeness triggered their internal threat response. And they are pulling away from that feeling, not from you. Now, does that mean you should just accept the behavior? Absolutely not. And we are going to get to that. But the first shift you need to make is getting out of the story that their withdrawal is about your worth, because it is not. It never was. The moment you truly internalize that, something shifts. You stop being a detective trying to figure out what you did wrong. You stop shrinking yourself to try and feel safer to them. You stop chasing. and you start seeing the situation clearly, which is exactly what you need in order to make a good decision about whether this relationship is right for you. Now, the second thing an avoidant will never tell you is probably the one that is going to sting the most. But I need you to hear it because I think on some level you already know it. They want connection just as much as you do. I know that sounds almost cruel given how they behave. Because if they want connection, why do they keep running from it? Why do they keep creating distance? Why do they say things like, I just need space, or I am not ready for anything serious, or I think we should slow things down, only to then show up at your door at midnight acting like they cannot live without you? Because here is the paradox at the heart of an avoidant person. They are simultaneously desperate for love and terrified of it. They want to feel close to someone. They want intimacy. They want to feel that warmth, that safety, that feeling of being truly known by another person. Every human being wants that. It is wired into us. It is not optional. But for an avoidant, the moment they start to actually get it, the moment the intimacy becomes real, the alarm bells go off. And so they push it away, not because they do not want it, but because some part of them believes that wanting it too much, depending on it too much, is what makes them vulnerable to being destroyed by it. Think about that cycle for a second. They want closeness. They get close, the closeness triggers fear, they pull away, the pulling away creates distance, the distance feels safer, they start to miss you, they come back, they get close again, the cycle repeats, round and round and round. And here is where it gets even more complicated. When you are in a relationship with an avoidant, you often end up doing something that makes the cycle worse. Because when they pull away, you feel anxious, and your anxiety pulls you toward them. You want to reach out, to reassure yourself that things are okay, to close the gap. And that reaching out, that leaning in, that pursuit, even though it comes from a completely understandable and human place, it actually confirms their fear. It starts to feel like being suffocated to them. So they pull away more, and then you feel more anxious, and you reach out more, and they pull away more. This is the anxious avoidant trap, and it is one of the most painful relationship dynamics in existence because both people are doing exactly what feels right to them, and it is making everything worse. So what do you do with this information? First, you have to break the cycle from your end. And I want to be very clear about something here. I am not telling you to play games. I am not telling you to manufacture distance to make them miss you. That is not a strategy. That is manipulation. What I am telling you is something different. I am telling you to genuinely invest in your own life. When an avoidant pulls back, instead of chasing, you go live your life. Not to make them jealous, not as a tactic, but because your life, your happiness, your well-being should never be fully contingent on where they are emotionally on any given day. When you have a life that is rich and full, independent of them, two things happen. First, you stop being so destabilized by their cycles. And second, you become genuinely more attractive because you are not coming from a place of desperate need. But, and this is crucial, even if it works, even if your stepping back triggers them to step forward, you still have a conversation you need to have. Because a relationship cannot be sustained by you constantly managing your behavior to keep them comfortable. That is exhausting. That is not love. That is a performance. Which brings me to the third thing an avoidant will never tell you. And this one is about what is actually keeping them stuck. They do not believe they deserve what they really want. This one runs so deep that most avoidants would genuinely reject it if you said it to their face. Because on the surface, avoidants often seem incredibly self-sufficient, even confident. They have their life together. They do not need anyone. They are fine alone. They are actually pretty good at being alone. And so from the outside, it looks like they are just choosy, or they value their independence, or they just have not met the right person yet. But underneath that self-sufficiency is often a core belief that goes something like this. If someone really knew me, the real me, not the put-together version, not the capable, independent version, the real underneath it all me, they would not stay. They would leave, or they would use it against me, or I would become too dependent on them, and that dependency would destroy me. So it is safer not to let anyone in that far. It is safer to keep things at a certain level of closeness where they can feel connection without ever being fully seen. They can be in a relationship without ever being fully vulnerable. They can care about you without ever fully admitting to themselves how much they care. And this creates a kind of loneliness that is incredibly hard to describe, because they are not alone. They are in your life. They are with you, but they are also somehow always slightly unreachable. Like there is always a pane of glass between them and real intimacy. And no matter how much you try to get to the other side of it, it just moves. And here is the tragic part. They feel that distance too. They feel that loneliness. They just do not know how to cross the gap without feeling like they are giving up something fundamental about who they are. Now, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be really honest with yourself here. When you think about the avoidant in your life, what is your role in the dynamic? Are you the one who is always trying to get through to them? Are you the one who is always making the effort to go deeper, to have the real conversations, to create the moments of genuine connection? Are you doing the emotional labor of the entire relationship? Because if the answer is yes, if you are the one who is always reaching across the distance, then I need you to hear this. You can love someone with everything you have and still not be able to give them what they have not yet been willing to develop in themselves. You are not a therapist. You are not responsible for healing someone who has not made the decision to heal themselves. And that does not make you a failure. It does not make them a bad person. It just means there is a very real limit to what love alone can do. Now, a lot of people at this point would say, okay, so avoidants are just a lost cause, right? Nobody should date an avoidant. And that is not what I am saying at all. Because avoidant attachment is not a life sentence. People change. People grow. People do the work and become far more secure in love over time. But, and this is a very important but, they have to want to do that work. They have to be willing to look at themselves honestly and make a conscious choice to show up differently. And that is something no amount of patience, understanding, or love from you can manufacture. It has to come from them. So the question you have to ask yourself is not, can this person change? Because theoretically, almost anyone can. The question is this person actually choosing to change? Right now, with you, in this relationship, are they making any movement toward growth? Are they willing to have honest conversations about this? Are they open to understanding their own patterns? Are they taking any steps, even small ones, toward being more available to you? Because if the answer is a clear no, if you have been patient for months or years and nothing has shifted, then that tells you something important. And the answer is not to love harder. The answer might be to love yourself enough to make a different choice. And now I want to get into the fourth thing, the one that I think is the most important of everything we are going to talk about today, because this one is about you more than it is about them. The fourth thing an avoidant will never tell you is this. They know you deserve better, and they are terrified that you will eventually realize it. I want you to think about what it must feel like to be someone who keeps hurting the person they care about and cannot explain why, even to themselves. Someone who keeps creating distance from the one thing they actually want. Someone who watches you giving and giving and giving, knowing somewhere inside themselves that they are not showing up the way you deserve, but feeling genuinely unable to close the gap. That is a painful place to exist. And I am not saying this to make you feel sorry for them to the point where you excuse the behavior. I am saying this because understanding it might help you stop taking it so personally, and it might help you see the conversation that actually needs to happen. Because here is what I see so often. The person who is with an avoidant becomes so focused on understanding the avoidance experience, so focused on being patient and compassionate and not rocking the boat, that they completely lose sight of their own needs. They start to edit themselves. They start to make themselves smaller. They stop asking for what they need because they do not want to trigger the avoidant or make them feel pressured. And slowly, almost without noticing it, they start to disappear. Not because they want to, but because the relationship has unconsciously trained them to. And that is a tragedy, not just because of what it does to the relationship, but because of what it does to you. Because the version of yourself you are performing in that relationship, the careful, always measured, always patient, never too much version, that is not actually you. That is you in survival mode. That is you trying to hold something together that requires you to shrink to fit inside it. And let me be very direct with you about something. A relationship should not require you to consistently be less than yourself in order to function. A relationship should be a place where you gradually become more yourself, more open, more alive, more free, not less. Now, I know some of you watching this are thinking, but I do not want to leave. I love them. I am connected to them. There is something real here. And maybe that is absolutely true. Maybe there is something real there. Maybe this person is genuinely trying, even if imperfectly, to show up. Maybe they are in therapy. Maybe they have conversations with you about this stuff, even if those conversations are hard. Maybe you see movement, even if it is slow. If that is the case, then what you need is not an exit. What you need is a clear, honest, non-anxious conversation about what you actually need from this relationship and whether they are willing and able to meet you there. And here is what that conversation does not look like. It does not look like an ultimatum delivered from a place of frustration after another painful cycle. It does not look like you crying and begging them to just let you in. It does not look like a long, emotionally exhausting discussion that leaves both of you feeling worse than before. Here is what that conversation does look like. It is calm. It is clear. It comes from a place of genuine self-respect, not from fear or anger or desperation. It sounds something like, I care about you and I want this to work. And I also need to be honest with you about what I need. I need someone who is working toward being emotionally available to me. Not perfect, not always fully open, but actively moving in that direction. Is that something you are willing to do? And then the most important part, you listen, not for the words you want to hear, but for the truth. Because an avoidant might say yes to that question while actually meaning, I will try to keep things comfortable enough that you do not leave. Or they might say, I do not know, which is actually more honest and worth more. Or they might say, yes, I am ready. I want to do this. And then actually show you through their actions over time that they meant it. The answer tells you everything, not immediately, not in one conversation, but over time, you will see whether the person who says they want to show up actually chooses to show up. And that is the information you need to make a real decision about your future. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to talk directly to those of you who have been sitting here listening and recognizing yourself not just in the partner who loves an avoidant, but in the avoidant. Because some of you watching this right now are the avoidant. And you might be watching this because somewhere inside you, you know that your patterns are costing you things you actually want. Maybe they already cost you something important. Maybe you look back at relationships that ended and you can see, honestly, that you were the one who kept creating distance. You were the one who could not let them in. You were the one who, at the moment things got real, started finding reasons to pull back. If that is you, first I want to say this. You are not broken. You are not unlovable. You are not incapable of intimacy. You learned to protect yourself in a world that made that protection feel necessary. And for a long time, that protection probably served you. But if you are here watching this, some part of you knows that the cost of that protection is starting to outweigh the safety it provides. And growth for you is not about forcing yourself to be more vulnerable before you are ready. It is not about performing openness. It is about starting to get curious about your own patterns, to notice without judgment what happens inside you when someone gets close. To start asking yourself, is this wall actually keeping me safe, or is it just keeping me alone? That awareness, that honest, unflinching willingness to look at yourself is the beginning of everything. And from that awareness, real change becomes possible. Not overnight, not without discomfort, but possible. And possible is everything. Now, for those of you who love an avoidant and you are sitting there wondering what to do next, I want to leave you with this. Your patience is not infinite, and it does not have to be. Your capacity to give love does not obligate you to give it in a context where it cannot be received. Being compassionate towards someone's struggle does not mean you have to sacrifice your own needs indefinitely on the altar of their healing. You are allowed to have needs. You are allowed to need someone who meets you halfway. You are allowed to want a relationship that does not consistently leave you feeling uncertain, anxious, or emotionally starved. Those are not unreasonable things to want. Those are the very basic requirements of a healthy partnership. And the most powerful thing you can do, not just for yourself, but actually for the avoidant in your life, is to hold a standard, a real, consistent, loving standard. Because what avoidants need at the deepest level is not someone who chases them endlessly. It is not someone who removes all demands and becomes completely available without reciprocation. What they actually need is someone who says, I see you, I care about you, and I also value myself enough to be honest about what I need. That is the thing that has the best chance of actually reaching them. Not chasing, not ultimatums born from desperation, not walking on eggshells, but a grounded, secure, self-respecting love that shows them what a real relationship can feel like when both people are choosing to be present. And if they cannot meet you there, if they consistently cannot step up to that, then the kindest thing you can do for both of you is to stop holding the relationship together alone and give each other the chance to find something that actually works. Because here is what I know about love. Real love is not supposed to be this exhausting. It is not supposed to feel like a constant puzzle you are trying to solve. It is not supposed to leave you lying awake, wondering where you stand with the person who is supposed to be your person. Real love has conflict and difficulty and imperfection, absolutely. But underneath all of that, there is a foundation of security. There is a baseline of, I know this person is here. I know this person is in this with me. I know this person wants this. And if you do not have that baseline, if the foundation underneath you is always shifting, always uncertain, always dependent on being careful enough and patient enough and understanding enough, then what you are doing is not loving. What you are doing is managing. And you deserve better than a relationship that requires you to manage it just to survive. So let me bring it all home. The 4 things an avoidant will never tell you. 1, they are not pulling away from you. They are pulling away from the feeling of closeness because their nervous system has been wired to see intimacy as a threat. 2, they want connection just as deeply as you do, but the wanting and the fear exist side by side, and most days the fear wins. 3, they do not believe at the deepest level that they are worthy of the love they actually want. And that belief is what keeps them locked in the cycle. And 4, they know you deserve more. They carry that awareness. And it is one of the things they are most afraid of you figuring out. And now you know all 4. So the question is, what are you going to do with that information? Are you going to use it to finally stop taking their behavior personally and start seeing it for what it is? Are you going to use it to have an honest conversation that you have been putting off? Are you going to use it to get real with yourself about whether this relationship is actually moving in a direction that works for you? Or if you recognized yourself as the avoidant in this, are you going to use it to start getting honest with yourself about the patterns that have been costing you love? Because knowledge without action is just comfort. And I do not think you came here just to be comforted. I think you came here because something in you is ready to see things clearly, to stop settling for almost, to stop accepting love that only shows up halfway, to stop shrinking yourself to fit inside a space that was never built to hold all of you. You deserve the whole thing. Not the almost version, not the maybe version, not the we are great when things are easy but disappear when things get real version. The whole thing. A love that is consistent, clear, and chosen every single day, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. And the first step toward that is always the same. Stop organizing your life around someone else's fear. Start living from your own clarity. You have got this, and I will see you in the next one.